Hello, YouTube, and welcome back to another book review from me, your host, Logan Albright. Today, I'm talking about Shirley Jackson's fourth novel, The Sundial. Now, I'm a big Shirley Jackson fan. We Have Always Lived in the Castle has always been one of my favorite books. I love her short stories. I love The Lottery. There's a lot of short stories I like. I really love her novel, Hangs a Man. And I've been trying to read some of her lesser-known novels. And I read The Bird's Nest recently, and I reviewed that. And there's one more to read after this one, I believe, her first novel, which I don't know that I'll get to anytime soon because I've heard it's not as good. But this one I had not really heard of, and I saw it in a bookstore, and I thought, I like Shirley Jackson, I'll check it out, The Sundial. And I picked it up, and I absolutely loved it. It ranks up there for me with the best of her work, and it might even be my new favorite Shirley Jackson novel because it's awesome. And for those of you who don't know her work, you know, she's famous for The Lottery, she's famous for The Haunting of Hill House, she's a little bit less famous for We Have Always Lived in the Castle, but I think that's one of her best novels. Kind of American sort of horror writer. Really inspired writing, though, and a great way with words, and I love her stuff. And this novel's awesome, and this novel has a lot of the stuff that I look for in a horror novel, although it's not really a horror novel. I don't know what you would call it. It's weird. It's sort of a satire. It's got some horror elements to it. It has some horror flavor to it, but I wouldn't really call it a horror novel. It's a little bit different and strange. It concerns this family called the Hallorans, and they live in this giant Gothic decaying mansion in where is it? I think it's in New England. The novel opens with this funeral. One of the family members has died and apparently been killed by another member of the family. Very strange. And all the family members are gathered there to discuss the death and go through the funeral, and you meet this eccentric cast of characters. And while they're there dealing with that, one of the family members, the older Aunt Fanny, goes out for a walk, and she is kind of lost in the mist, gets lost in the darkness and the mist, and she has a vision of her father, and her father tells her that the end is nigh, that some kind of great apocalyptic disaster is coming, and that they need to board up inside the house and wait for the apocalypse to come, essentially, and that they're going to be protected. And so they start this sort of like utopian doomsday cult with basically just consisting of the family and a few family friends who hole up in the mansion and prepare for the end of the world. That's basically the plot of the novel, at least the setup for the novel. And it has a lot of things that I love in it. Like, I love big Gothic spooky mansions. I love like weird decaying clans, family clans. This really reminds me of a lot of things, actually, but one of the things it reminds me of, there's a card game called Gloom, which I've played in the past, which is it's like an Edward Gorey sort of based card game, and it really reminds me of this, with this kind of, this Gothic follow the House of Usher kind of family, where things are just like falling into ruin around them, and they're having to deal with their interpersonal conflicts, and they're holed up in this giant Gothic mansion. That really reminds me of that. It does remind me of The Fall of the House of Usher for the same reason. It reminds me of some of the works of William Faulkner in his kind of like Southern Gothic style, like A Rose for Emily, those kind of stories. It's just like, it's such a crazy cast of characters, and it took me a while to kind of learn all the different characters, because a lot of them have the last name Halloran, and a lot of them are referred to as Mrs. Halloran or Miss Halloran and things like that, and it takes a little while to sort out who they are and what their names are. So the beginning of the novel, it opens very Gothic and spooky, and there's a ghostly visitation like in Hamlet, and there's a murder, and there's all this stuff going on, and then it like kind of shifts genres halfway through, and it becomes more of like a satire of this kind of utopian doomsday cults, and they think that they're going to be the only humans left on Earth, and it's going to be up to them to rebuild society, and they have to prepare for that. And they're like, the world will be new again, and it'll be beautiful and green and wonderful. And they kind of gradually come to realize that they still hate each other, and they still are a dysfunctional family, and it kind of doesn't matter what happens in the rest of the world, because it's still going to be a disastrous situation for them to be in, all having to be holed up together, who really don't get along and are always snarking at each other. The other thing that I think is interesting about this book is it's really funny. The rest of Shirley Jackson's works are not known for their comedy, and I can't really think of too much comedy that's in them, but this one is pretty funny. It's very dry, biting humor about these family members kind of, sniping at each other and saying kind of caustic things, and being very blasé about stuff that you should really care more about, like the fact that there's been apparently a ghostly vision that one of them has seen. Everyone's like, oh, really, that old thing? And there's like a ghost snake that appears at one point, and everyone just kind of blows it off and doesn't take it seriously. There's a lot of absurdity in it, and there's a lot of like the whole thing at the beginning with the murder, where the one of the sons has been apparently pushed down the stairs by the mother, and they're just kind of like, oh yeah, that's what she does, and it's everything is handled very dry and very matter of fact, and there's a lot of kind of absurdist humor in there, which I really enjoyed and thought was great. It's a weird book. I'm not quite sure what the point of the book is. I think that like part of the point of the book is, like I said, it doesn't really matter about the external circumstances if your interpersonal relations are no good. It doesn't matter if there's an apocalypse and the world is new. It doesn't matter if you're the only people left on Earth. If you don't get along and you're having a chaotic and difficult time in this world, you're going to have a chaotic and difficult time in any world. It doesn't really matter. But so I found that really interesting, and I found the characters really funny. I found the characters great because they're all such eccentrics. There's another reference point I was going to bring up, which is really obscure and no one's going to know it, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. There's this band called the Bonzo Dog Band. It was like a comedy troupe, kind of pre-Monty Python, English, very English. And one of their members who wrote a lot of their songs was named Vivian Stanshall. He was on the Tubular Bells album. He's done a lot of stuff, but he released a solo album called Rawlinson End. And it's basically a spoken word album with a few songs sprinkled in, and it's his kind of eccentric portrayal of this English manor with all the servants and all the aristocracy and all the like ne'er-do-well children and all that kind of stuff. And he does all the voices for it, and he sings a bunch of songs in it. But it's absurd and it's goofy, and it satirizes that very kind of English trope of these aristocratic families and how weird and dysfunctional they are, and the pretensions that they get up to and stuff like that. It's really funny. I recommend the album to anyone who's into that sort of thing. It's pretty obscure now, but Rawlinson Inn by Vivian Stanshall, worth a listen. But it made me think a lot of this, because although this is American and not English, it does have that kind of aristocratic dynasty feel to it, where all the people are weird and insular and stuck up and pretentious and, you know, self-important. They have all their own oddities and stuff. And I find that really funny, and I find it a really fun setting for a novel. So I really loved The Sundial by Shirley Jackson. If you like her other work, I would highly recommend that you read it. I'll probably get to her first novel at some point, but I don't expect to like that as much as this one. But it was a real treat and a real delight to discover, because, you know, I've been kind of going through this journey on my channel a little bit, where I've been reading some of the lesser known works of well-known authors, and I find it's kind of surprising which works are famous and which ones aren't, because like I think this is every bit as good as We Have Always Lived in the Castle. I think it's better than Hill House, which I've never really been that fond of. And I think it's better than a lot of her work, and yet it's completely unknown, and the other works are very, very famous. So that's kind of strange, but it should be more well-known. It's excellent. Recommend The Sundial by Shirley Jackson. That's all I've got for today. If you enjoyed this video, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click the bell for notifications, leave me comments down below telling me what you thought of the book or what you think of other Shirley Jackson books, and I will be back next week with another book review for you. Thanks so much for watching. I've been your host, Logan Albright, and I'll catch you next time.